The ad said, "Live-in domestic help needed. Private residence. Upper East Side. Competitive pay. Discretion required." Serena Caldwell read it 4 times sitting on the edge of her friend Dana's couch, Lily asleep against her chest. The apartment so quiet she could hear the city humming 6 floors below. Discretion required. She almost laughed. She had been practicing discretion for 8 months. Ever since she refused to write a name on that hospital form, ever since her mother stopped answering her calls, ever since the world she thought she was building crumbled into a pile of unpaid bills and unanswered prayers. She was 23 years old. She had a business degree she hadn't used, a baby she loved more than breathing, and exactly $214 left in her checking account. She sent the email before she could talk herself out of it. The response came in 40 minutes. An address on East 73rd Street. 8 o'clock the following morning. Ask for Rosa. She almost turned back 3 times on the walk from the subway. The neighborhood changed the way neighborhoods on the Upper East Side always did. Gradually, then all at once. The sidewalks got wider. The buildings got taller. The doormen got crisper. By the time she reached the address, she was standing in front of a limestone mansion that didn't look like it belonged on a New York City street at all. It looked like something lifted from the Italian countryside and dropped between 2 quieter brownstones as a reminder that some people existed on a different plane entirely. There were cameras above the iron gate. 2 of them angled precisely. She noticed them the same way she noticed the man standing just inside the gate. Suit too nice for a Tuesday morning, jaw too tight for someone doing nothing. He looked her over once, said nothing, and pressed a button on his earpiece. The gate opened. Rosa was a compact woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair pinned flat and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. She assessed Serena in the foyer, took in the diaper bag on her shoulder, the baby carrier strapped to her chest, Lily's small fist curled against Serena's collarbone, and her expression didn't change even slightly. "You brought the child," Rosa said. "The ad said live-in." Serena kept her voice steady. "She goes where I go. That wasn't negotiable for me." Rosa looked at Lily for a long moment. Then she turned and walked toward a hallway off the foyer. "Follow me." The servants' quarters were on the east wing of the ground floor, clean, spare, and warmer than Dana's couch. A single bed, a crib that had already been assembled in the corner, a window overlooking a private garden. Serena stood in the doorway and hated how relieved she felt. Rosa stood behind her and spoke in the measured tone of a woman who had given this speech before. "Duties begin at 6. Breakfast prep, common rooms, laundry. You do not go to the 3rd floor. You do not open closed doors. You do not ask about Mr. Vitali's schedule, his guests, or his business. You answer questions when asked, and otherwise you are invisible. Are we clear?" "Yes." "The pay is deposited every Friday. Benefits begin after 30 days. Rosa paused. "Mr. Vitali is away on business. He returns when he returns. Until then, the house runs on my word." Serena nodded, set Lily gently in the crib, and watched her daughter sleep. "This is temporary," she told herself. "Just enough to get back on your feet." She repeated it like a prayer as she unpacked the 3 bags that held everything she owned. She repeated it as she learned the kitchen, learned the hallways, learned the weight of the silence that lived inside that house like a 5th wall. She repeated it that night as Lily fed and fussed and finally settled, and Serena lay in the dark staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant sound of traffic and trying not to wonder too hard about the man whose name Rosa had said the way people say the names of things that can hurt you. Mr. Vitali. She told herself the name meant nothing. She told herself she was safe. She told herself a lot of things that first night, and sleep came slowly and without much comfort. She had been at the mansion for 3 days when the black SUVs came. It was 12:17 in the morning. Serena knew because Lily had woken at midnight exactly, like clockwork, like a tiny alarm she had no say in, and she was sitting in the rocking chair in their room, Lily nursing quietly in the dark when she heard the sound. Engines. More than one. The crunch of tires on the private driveway that curved around the east side of the mansion. She heard doors open. Heard the low rumble of male voices, the quick clipped instructions of men used to being obeyed. She heard Rosa's heels on the marble foyer, quick, purposeful, and then the heavy front door swung open and the cold October air rushed in even from where Serena sat 2 hallways away. She shouldn't have gone to look. She knew that. Rosa had been clear. She went anyway. Lily was drowsy and content, warm in the crook of Serena's arm, as Serena eased the door open and slipped into the hallway that led to the servants' staircase. The staircase looked down over the foyer from a half landing, high enough to see everything, shadowed enough that no one below would think to look up. She reached the landing and looked down. There were 4 men in the foyer. 2 of them she recognized as house security. She'd seen them at the gate. The other 2 were new. And in the center of all of them, shedding a dark wool overcoat and handing it to Rosa without looking at her, was a man that made Serena's heart stop so completely she actually pressed her free hand flat against the wall to stay upright. He was tall, dark-haired, the kind of face that was almost too composed, like every expression on it had been deliberately chosen and everything else locked somewhere deeper than anyone was allowed to go. He was speaking in a low voice to the man on his left, something clipped and final, and the man nodded and disappeared without another word. Serena knew that voice. She knew the line of those shoulders. She knew the way he stood, like the room rearranged itself around him without being asked. Dominic. She had never known his last name. He hadn't offered it that night at the St. Regis Gala 15 months ago, and she hadn't asked, because she was 22 and he was magnetic, and the whole evening had felt like something borrowed from someone else's life. They had talked for 3 hours, danced once, and then the rest of the night had happened the way it did. Quiet and inevitable, and nothing like anything Serena had experienced before or since. In the morning he was gone. No note, no number. Just the faint imprint of him on the other side of the bed, and the beginning of something she wouldn't understand for another 4 weeks. She had tried to find him. Searched every name she could think of, every face from that gala. Nothing. He had moved through that night like smoke. And now he was standing in the foyer of the house she mopped floors in, and he was not smoke. He was Dominic Vitali. His name was on the deed and on the gate and in the low, reverent way Rosa had said it, and Serena understood in a crash of cold clarity that she had taken a job in the home of the man the city whispered about the way it whispered about weather, as something powerful and indifferent and capable of serious damage. As if he felt the weight of her stare, he looked up, directly at her. The foyer below went very still. Serena didn't breathe. Lily made a small sound against her chest, just a small one, and Dominic's eyes moved from Serena's face to the baby and back again, and something passed across his expression that was gone before she could name it. He said nothing. She said nothing. Rosa appeared from the side hallway like she had been waiting for exactly this moment. Serena. Her voice was quiet but absolute. Back to your room, please. Serena went. She walked back down the hallway, back to the room, laid Lily in the crib with hands that had developed a slight tremor she could not control, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark for a very long time. He hadn't spoken. Hadn't reacted. His face had closed like a door shutting. Maybe he didn't remember her. Had been 15 months. Men like that moved through the world collecting evenings and discarding them. Maybe she was nothing but a vague shape in a crowded memory. But the way he had looked at Lily. He will find out, she thought. The thought came incomplete and certain, the way true things did. Men like him always do. She didn't sleep again that night. Enjoying the story. Subscribe to Stories by Nixie and hit the bell so you never miss a new episode. New stories drop every week. He was everywhere and nowhere. That was how Serena experienced Dominic Vitali in the days that followed. A presence that filled the mansion without ever quite occupying the same space as her. She would turn a corner and find the room had just been left. She would hear his voice from behind a closed door and feel it move through the wall like current. She would set his breakfast tray outside the study at 7:15 every morning, knock twice as Rosa had instructed, and retreat before the door opened. She was invisible. She was doing exactly what she'd been hired to do. Yet, she would look up from mopping the east corridor and find him at the far end of it, watching her with an expression that gave nothing away. She would be in the garden with Lily on a blanket in the thin autumn sunlight, and she would feel the particular weight of being watched, and look up to find him at the second-floor window. Not threatening. Not moving. Just watching with those dark, still eyes before he stepped back from the glass like he hadn't been there at all. It was Lily he kept coming back to. Serena saw it happen twice. Once in the kitchen. She had Lily and the bouncer on the counter while she prepped the afternoon trays, and she turned to find Dominic in the doorway, coffee cup in hand, staring at her daughter with an intensity that made the air in the room feel different. He blinked, looked at Serena, said, "Excuse me," in a voice that was perfectly neutral, and left. The second time was in the foyer. Lily had pulled herself upright in the carrier and was blowing raspberries at the chandelier, the way she did when she was pleased with herself, and Dominic had passed through and stopped, and for 3 full seconds he had done nothing but look at Lily's face. Rosa had noticed. Serena knew because Rosa had stopped making eye contact with her entirely, which was somehow worse than anything she might have said. She had been at the mansion 11 days when Margaret Vitali arrived. There was no warning, just the sound of the front door and a voice that carried like someone who had never once needed to raise it to fill a room. "Rosa, where's my son? Don't tell me he's in that study again." Serena was changing Lily on the bed when she heard it. She finished, snapped the onesie, picked Lily up, and made a decision to stay exactly where she was. The decision lasted 4 minutes. Rosa knocked and opened the door in the same motion, something she had never done before. "Mrs. Vitali would like to meet the staff," she said, in a tone that meant this is not optional. Margaret Vitali was in her early 60s and looked like a woman who had been formidable her entire life and saw no reason to change. Silver hair blown smooth. Pearls. A camel coat that cost more than Serena's car had, back when she'd had one. She stood in the hallway and looked at Serena the way Rosa had on the first day. Completely, quickly, missing nothing. Then her eyes dropped to Lily. Something shifted. It was subtle, the smallest rearrangement of her features, but it was there. She crossed the distance between them without asking, reached out, and lifted Lily from Serena's arms with the practiced ease of a woman who had held many babies. Lily, who screamed at strangers, did not scream. She grabbed a strand of Margaret's pearl necklace and studied it with extreme seriousness. Margaret studied Lily with the same seriousness. The silence stretched long enough to become something else entirely. "She's beautiful," Margaret said finally. Her voice was careful now. Measured. "How old?" 8 months, Serena said. Margaret looked up. "And her father?" "Not in the picture." Another silence. Margaret looked back at Lily. At her dark eyes, her strong jaw, the particular stillness she had when she was concentrating that made her look, sometimes impossibly adult. "Where did you say you were from, dear?" Margaret asked softly. "I didn't," Serena said. Margaret handed Lily back slowly, her hands lingering a beat too long. She smiled, small, knowing, and just slightly dangerous. "No," she said. "I suppose you didn't." That night, Serena pulled her bags from the closet. She had waited too long already. Margaret's eyes had said everything Rosa's silence had been saying for days. The house knew. Or it was getting there. And when a man like Dominic Vitali found out that his maid had been hiding his daughter in the servants' quarters for 2 weeks, she didn't want to imagine what came next. She would leave at 4. Before Rosa was up. She would take the subway to Dana's, figure out the rest from there. She was folding Lily's sleepers into the bag when she saw it. A folded piece of paper sitting directly on top of the duffel. She hadn't put it there. She opened it with fingers that had gone very still. "Don't leave. We need to talk. D." Serena sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, Lily asleep in the crib, the note open in her hands, the city humming dark and indifferent outside the window. She put the bags back in the closet. He was already in the study when Rosa brought her there the following morning. The room was large and deliberately dark, heavy curtains drawn against the early light, bookshelves floor to ceiling, a desk the size of a small country. Dominic was standing at the window with his back to the door when she entered. Rosa closed the door behind her from the outside. Serena heard the soft click of it and felt the room change. Not smaller exactly, but more honest somehow. Like this was the space where things actually happened, and everything outside it was theater. Sit down, Dominic said without turning around. I'd rather stand. He turned then. He looked like he hadn't slept, not in a disheveled way, but in the way of someone who had been awake on purpose, thinking through something they needed to resolve before anyone else woke up. He looked at her the way he had in the foyer the first night, completely without flinching. How long have you known where I was? He asked. I didn't. I answered an ad. Something moved across his face. I had people looking for you. After the gala. He paused. For 3 months. Serena said nothing. You disappeared. His voice was controlled but barely. No social media. No address. Your previous employer had no forwarding information. I had 3 of my best people on it and they came back with nothing. I wasn't hiding from you specifically, she said. I was just gone. I had reasons. He crossed the room slowly and stopped at the near edge of the desk, close enough that she could see the tension running through his jaw. I need you to tell me something, Serena. It was the first time he had said her name. It landed differently than she expected. The baby, he said. Lily. He stopped. Started again. How old did you say she was? 8 months. The silence that followed was the longest of Serena's life. She watched him do the math. Watched it land. She's mine, he said. It wasn't a question. Serena's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs and looked him directly in the eyes and said, Yes. The room shattered. Not loudly. Dominic Vitali was not a man who shattered loudly. It happened in the stillness, in the way he turned away from her and put both hands on the desk and stood there, head down, breathing like someone who had just taken a blow to the chest and was deciding whether to stay upright. It happened in the long, terrible silence that followed, in which Serena did not move or speak because she understood, somehow, that this was not the moment for words. When he turned back around, his face was different. Not colder. More fractured. Why didn't you find me? His voice was rough. I tried. You gave me no name. No number. You were gone before I woke up. I came back. He said it like it cost him something. An hour later. You were already checked out. She stared at him. You came back. Yes. The words sat between them like something neither of them knew how to pick up. Then the fracture became something else. His eyes went sharp. You have been in this house for 2 weeks. You have been in this house with my daughter and you said nothing. I was going to leave. You were going to leave. The temperature in the room dropped. You were going to take my child and disappear again. She is my child. Serena's voice came out harder than she intended, and she let it. Mine. I carried her alone. I delivered her alone. I have kept her alive and fed and warm for 8 months completely alone. You don't get to stand in your expensive study and make me feel like I did something wrong. Silence. I want a DNA test, he said quietly. Fine. And I want to be part of her life. That, she said, is something we would need to discuss. Because your life, she gestured at the room, at the cameras, at the armed men somewhere beyond the walls, is not a life I want my daughter inside. Our daughter. Not yet. She held his gaze. Not until I know what that means. He moved toward her and she held her ground, and they were close. Closer than they'd been since that night. And his voice dropped to something quiet and unguarded that she wasn't prepared for. I didn't forget you, he said. I want you to know that. Whatever else happens. I didn't forget you. Serena opened her mouth to respond. The study door opened. Chloe Harrington was the kind of beautiful that announced itself before she walked into a room. Glossy, precise, the sort of woman who wore Sunday morning like an occasion. She stood in the doorway in a cream silk blouse, luggage visible behind her in the hall, and took in the scene in front of her with eyes that understood it immediately and chose not to show that they did. Dominic. Her voice was light. Practiced. Rosa let me in. I hope I'm not interrupting. The space between Serena and Dominic collapsed as they both stepped back. Serena looked at Chloe. Chloe looked at Serena with a smile that had very little to do with warmth. I'm the maid, Serena said flatly, and walked past her through the door. If this story has you gripped, like, comment, and share with someone who loves a dangerous love story. You're watching Stories by Nixie, where every story hits different. The DNA results came back on a Thursday. Dominic texted her one word. Confirmed. As if she had needed a lab to tell her what Lily's face had been announcing to the entire household for 2 weeks. She texted back, I know. He didn't respond after that, and for 3 days the mansion operated on a particular kind of charged silence, the kind that comes before something breaks or something changes, and nobody can tell yet which one it will be. Chloe left on Saturday. Serena didn't witness it, but she heard it. Heels on marble, bags on tile, a car door closing with a specific finality of someone who was not planning to return. She heard Dominic's voice once, low and deliberate, and then nothing. Rosa appeared in the kitchen 20 minutes later and made herself a cup of tea and said, without looking at Serena, Mrs. Harrington will not be returning. Serena nodded and said nothing and felt something complicated move through her chest. He came to find her that evening. She was in the garden, the one visible from the second-floor window, where she had begun taking Lily after dinner when the October air was still soft enough for it. Lily was on the blanket pulling at the grass with the intense focus she brought to everything, and Serena was watching her the way she always did, the way that never got old, when she heard footsteps on the stone path behind her. Dominic sat down on the bench 2 feet from the blanket and looked at Lily. Lily looked back at him. They regarded each other in silence for a long moment, the baby and the man who had no idea what to do with her, and then Lily very deliberately held out a fistful of grass in his direction, offering it with all the generosity of someone presenting a great gift. Dominic looked at the grass, looked at Lily, and something in his face came undone, not dramatically, not with any sound, just a slow and quiet undoing like a knot releasing. He reached out and took the grass. Thank you, he said gravely. Lily beamed. I owe you the truth, he said after a while. Serena waited. My family's business. He paused, chose words with the care of someone who had learned that words had weight. It is not legitimate. You have seen enough of this house to understand that. What you may not fully understand is what it means to be connected to it. The risk, the exposure, the kind of attention that comes for the people in my life whether they want it or not. I understand more than you think, Serena said quietly. I'm not telling you to warn you off. He turned to look at her directly. I am telling you because you deserve to know exactly what you'd be walking into. No version that makes it sound better than it is. No promise that doubles as a cage. He looked back at Lily. She deserves to know who her father is. Whatever you decide, I want that. I want to know her. You ended things with Chloe, Serena said. Yes. For Lily. He was quiet for a moment. Partly. And partly because I have been building a life that looks correct from the outside and means nothing from the inside, and I am done with it. Serena was quiet. I'm not asking you to stay because of her, he said. I want to be clear about that. I'm asking because that night meant something. 'Cause I came back. Because I have spent 15 months with a version of you in my head that was put together from 3 hours and nothing else. And you have been in this house for 2 weeks and every single thing I remembered was right. Serena looked at him. He looked back, and for once the composure was completely gone. Not replaced by something weak, just something realer. Something that didn't have a name yet but was clearly there, clearly his. I'm not a safe choice, he said. I know. My world is complicated in ways that don't resolve. I know that too. Then what are you thinking, he asked. What she was thinking was this. She was thinking about the couch at Dana's apartment and the $214 and the hospital form with a blank line. She was thinking about her mother's silence and the way she had learned to be enough for Lily all by herself, and how that had been hard and necessary and had made her into someone she was proud of. She was thinking about the note under the door. Don't leave. And how she had stayed not because she was told to but because some part of her already knew. She was thinking about a man who had come back to a hotel room an hour later. About what it meant that he had looked for her for 3 months. About what it meant that the first thing he did when Lily handed him a fistful of grass was say thank you like it was a real gift. She was thinking about what she deserved. Not what was safe. Not what was easy. What she deserved. She reached over and picked Lily up from the blanket, and Lily immediately grabbed for the air between them as if demanding to be closer to the tall man on the bench with the serious face. Serena hesitated for just a moment. Then she passed Lily to Dominic. He took her with both hands, carefully like something irreplaceable which she was, and held her against his chest, and Lily grabbed his collar and laughed. The sound of it rose into the evening air, clear and bright and absolutely unself-conscious, and the look on Dominic Vitali's face was something Serena knew she would carry for the rest of her life. He looked like a man who had just found something he hadn't known he was missing. "I'm not saying yes to everything," Serena said. "I'm saying I'm willing to have the conversation. The real one. About what this looks like. About what safe means for her. About what I need." He looked up from Lily. "That's all I'm asking for." "No," she said. "You were asking me to stay." The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile but close. The closest she'd seen. "Yes," he admitted. "I was asking for that too." Serena looked at her daughter in the arms of a man who ran the dark side of New York City, laughing like she already knew exactly where she belonged. "Then let's talk," Serena said. And for the first time in 8 months, she felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't even realized was clenched. Not certainty. Not safety. Something more honest than both of those things. Something that felt against all reasonable odds like the beginning. And that's a wrap on this story. Subscribe to Stories by Nixie for brand new stories every single week. Drop a yellow heart in the comments if you enjoy the story. Your support keeps these stories alive. See you in the next one.